Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Global Innovation and Future Technology Summit. One of the most important quotes that's dear to my heart is, "If we begin to care for the environment diligently, it will significantly improve the human health." Actually, by Leila and Akira. Actually, so welcome to this panel. The panel, as you know, is focused on race to zero emissions, that also called net zero. Actually, climate and clean energy. Hello, I'm Prasun Mishra. I lead the American Association for Precision Medicine, also called AAPM. And the vision of AAPM is to accelerate the field of precision medicine and transform patient health. And as we advance with the field of precision medicine, now we have global governments and companies monitoring healthy volunteers and trying to figure out why they get sick in the first place, actually. And then we have layered different so omics, actually, their microbiome, their exposome, and that's exposome is what they're exposed, what is your environment, actually. And then now it's becoming more clear and clear that your environment is most important, actually, determinant of your health, actually. So that's a layer that we are bringing to the healthcare, actually. And then happy to I'm delighted that I'm joined by Dr. John Mattison and Dr. Usha Roopnarain, Mark Ritchie, and Anil Pandey, who would join the discussion with us on net zero, climate action, and clean energy, and how as a community we can do about it. And our discussion will focus on how our exposome basically can change our health, and as a community what we can do to basically grow healthy individuals, our next generation, and really foster a healthy world, actually. So net zero, a lot of us have a question: what is net zero? Net zero, to those who are new to this, I know this is a technology focused event, and we it is attracting a lot of folks who are new to this. Net zero means we are not adding any new emissions to the atmosphere. Actually, emissions will continue, but what we are trying to do is we are balancing those emissions that we are by equivalent amount of absorbing equivalent amount of those emissions from atmosphere. So overall it leads to zero emissions. And we have now countries that have joined the Paris Agreement, actually, on climate change, which calls for keeping global temperatures to 1.5 degrees centigrade, above pre-industrial era levels, actually. And we have it's and you will learn from the panelists why as a globe we have this initiative to see if we can really reduce the carbon footprint, actually, and by 2050 and foster a better future and better healthy lay the foundation for the healthy world, actually. So with that, I think I would like to invite our speakers to introduce themselves, and I think with the context of how their initiatives have helped further the field, as well as what are their future plans. So I would like to invite Mark Ritchie. Actually, Mark is the former Secretary of State of Minnesota, actually, so he has experience of running the whole state, as well as he's now president of Global Minnesota, which is a global organization, so they're all active globally. So Mark, stage is all yours, so please introduce yourselves and enlighten us.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, and congratulations on bringing all of us together and making this perspective now a larger vision for the whole society. And I want to share my background just briefly because we're going to have a lot of interesting conversation. As mentioned, I have served as Minnesota Secretary of State, and prior to that, I was in charge of the trade policy for the state, but specifically focused on agriculture and food inside the Minnesota, so the state level Department of Agriculture. In that role and in that position, I had the opportunity to talk with all of our different companies. Secretary of State's office provides services to every business. And it's become clear that they were themselves seeing the importance of beginning to incorporate into their thinking, their planning, their production, their supply chain, a greening of their operations alongside of attention to social issues and governance issues. We now have lots of alphabet soup around ESG and SDG, but I could see over time that people were looking for solutions, which is the starting point for how we get towards net zero. Because once somebody says, we don't want to be doing this, then they're open to the different options it can take to get there. We can have all the cars be electric cars, but if a third of the electricity is coming from coal-fired plants, we're still going to be having problems for human health and planetary health. So I've been privileged to be able to be part of these global conversations about setting standards, about how we hold each other accountable. I'm thrilled to see the level of integration with how human health and planetary health fit together. And I'm part of a public-private partnership in our state of Minnesota that's working to bring a World's Fair, a World Expo, sometimes called Specialized Expo, under the theme Healthy People, Healthy Planet, looking at the UN's Sustainable Development Goals in health and how we tie ourselves together to achieve those goals. So thank you again for inviting me to the panel, and I look forward to learning and participating in this important public conversation.
Thank you, Mark. That has been amazing. So those I think state of Minnesota has taken these initiatives, and I'm sure we all the states can learn from that. So looking forward to that discussion. Actually, next I would like to invite Dr. John Mattison. Actually, and John is an operating partner and CMIO at Arsenal Capital Partners. Actually, and he is former Chief Medical Information Officer at Kaiser Permanente. John, I have known John from a very long time, and he has been a passionate advocate for climate change, clean energy, and we used to meet at different conferences. And John is the one guy that I will see in healthcare who would always bridge the two worlds together. And now, John, the whole world is focused on that. Actually, I think, and so you were right from the beginning. John, the stage is all yours. Actually, please introduce yourself. And yeah.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and there is no more critical topic for any of us to focus on than climate change, the biggest existential threat in the history of the human species. I personally have been afflicted genetically with a systems approach to everything that I try to understand. And so early on with physics, marine biology, evolutionary biology, and ecosystem approach to biology. And then when I went into medicine, I chose internal medicine, critical care, and trauma medicine because of their reliance on broad systemic approaches to multi-organ system disease. And then on to multi-omics and the analytics associated with all of the different aspects of the human experience. You mentioned Prasun the exposome, the environmental factors, which include the socialome, social determinants of health. And most importantly now, COVID has laid bare these interdependencies that we all have on each other, that our systems have on each other, that our countries have on each other. And the supply chain issues right now are so complex that finding our path out of the impact of COVID offers many lessons in terms of how we should think about solving the problems with climate change. So now I'm in the private equity space working on economic systems, building ethical companies at scale inside the healthcare enterprise. And again, many lessons there that apply to a systematic approach to addressing climate change. I've also had the privilege of consulting globally throughout the European Union, China, India, North and South America. And what's really fascinating is to understand the different narratives from different perspectives in different countries, and how we need to localize our strategies so that they resonate with the narratives endemic to a particular country, region, culture, and being sensitive to the fact that while we're all one, we look at the world through different lenses that are shaped by our own personal experiences and by the cultures that we emerge from. And so we can't have, frankly, a one-size-fits-all strategy. It has to be very much adapted. And I think that's apparent from the recent COPs meetings, that there are some challenging trade-offs that are perceived differently in different countries. So climate change really represents the most profound self-inflicted wound that any species has ever perpetrated on themselves. And it is our use of tools that have allowed us to harvest fossil fuel energy in very productive ways that has led to the problem we're facing. And it's going to be innovation in tools in the same way that allows us to escape the problems we've created through the use of tools, particularly around energy generation historically. But that'll only happen through a systematic approach. And I've been in many debates just in the past couple of months where people say, well, no, we need to focus more on electric vehicles. No, we need to focus more on power generation from renewable resources. No, we need to force on restricting our individual lifestyle choices. No, it's something, the correct answer is all of the above, localized to the individual. And there is one thing that we can all do to help address the issues of climate change, and that's to shift as much as we can into a plant-based diet. The evidence that raising animals for food and human consumption has been one of the major contributors to climate change, really underappreciated. So every single one of us can do things right now to help that. And then just to end quickly, with these multiple system issues that are leading to climate change, they're not only compounded internally, but they compound each other. So the net effect of all these different contributing sources, whether it's methane from melting tundra or carbon dioxide from fossil fuel consumption, they each compound each other's problems. The warmer we get, the warmer we get. And so there is an urgency because of this compound factor across these contributions. And then the last thing I'll say is that we need not to discount any particular solution, because it may be that the best solution by itself has yet to be invented. And at the same time, there are lots of solutions already in development that offer great promise for helping the problem. So overall, I'm cautiously very optimistic that we can slay this beast by the same innovation process that created the problem in the first place, and that is human ingenuity and the use of tools. So I am confident that we can overcome this problem, but only with an accelerated sense of urgency, an accelerated sense of collaboration, and harvesting the lessons that are just staring us in the face of how poorly we've managed the COVID pandemic and how interdependent we are upon each other. So there's a lot of lessons we can harvest that are very fresh in our minds, and taking a systematic approach to all of these is going to be the way that we're going to find our path out of climate change.
Thank you, John. This is amazing. Actually, you bring an amazing perspective, and these are all golden words, actually. And we'll keep them repeating, actually. So yeah, I think. And next, I would like to introduce Anil Pandey. Actually, Anil is the Chief Innovation Officer at Enzen Group, which is a global company focused on clean energy, green energy, net zero, consultancy. And Anil is joining us from Bangalore, India. And Anil, welcome. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Prasun. It's been exciting hearing Mark and John, very profound statement that they made. So let me just introduce a bit of myself. I have worked in several, utilities engagements where carbon footprint has been always there in the back of the mind. Um, so early part of 1990s when several utility solutions were being implemented. Uh, Climate control, greenhouse gas emissions, these were really not seriously thought about. With the advent of smart city designs and the architectures that needed a lot of advanced technology interventions, people started thinking about affordable energy. At the same time, they started worrying about the environment and planet Earth. Uh, and in this decade, and now we are into 2021, uh, getting into the new decade. This decade and the coming decade is going to be really very important for us to systematically planning, thinking, and creating an ecosystem where each one can think alike. We share a lot of perspective, and so thanks for organizing this kind of session where the shared vision will become a reality, and people will keep connecting and collaborating to find better options and solutions. So let me introduce Enzen a bit. It's a global enterprise, a group of 20 companies that we acquired over the last 8 to 10 years, uh, and a group of 4,000 knowledge practitioners. We provide outcome-based strategic advisory, consulting, and execution services to energy and utilities customers worldwide. So we are in almost 24 countries at the moment. Um, for our chairman and many of the leaders in the organization, what is important is how do we make energy affordable, and the power delivery should give the power of choice to the customer, and not to kind of do an implementation which will solve technology problem, but really think of how do we really help keep the planet Earth uh, cleaner, greener, and how do we help our customers achieve the net zero and climate control problems, right? Um, so from that perspective, Engen has gone on to acquire many companies. We have acquired mobility. Uh, we have companies in our group that actually solve electric vehicle problems. Mobility is combined with electric vehicles, and um, so when we are building, solutions for asset performance management, we're looking at, how do we really visualize the asset from the perspective of notifying which asset in the network is actually going to contribute more greenhouse gas to more greenhouse gas emission. So from that perspective, Engen has tried a couple of uh, implementations with some customers in UK County, dealing with carbon savings in LED lamps, and there we try to assess the risk benefits implementations of the energy efficiency, some of the carbon savings by developing the comprehensive inventory. All this will, under the guidelines of the World Resource Institute at St. Helens, which is the last town in Merseyside region in UK. We developed a carbon strategy that delivered quantifiable benefits to its citizens in saving about 1.5 million pounds of uh, energy over 4 years, and reduced almost 18,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emission. In the Northern Gas network, where they deliver 2.7 million homes and businesses the gas over the 36,000 kilometer pipeline. Um, our implementations actually help them with greenhouse gas emission reduction and 18,000 metric tons of CO2 emission reduction. So in all, the perspective is to democratize and give the power in the hands of the customer by mobility, etc., more and more remote, and thereby reducing the carbon contribution to move towards the net zero. So that's how what has been the core of our thinking. So how do we make the whole thing sustainable And then when we go into the policy influencing, smart city planning, etc., keep all of these things in the background had been at the core of our thinking all these years.
Thank you, Anil. No, this is a great accomplishment. Yeah, these are so you are right there. You're in the field and kind of helping local regions, counties, and countries actually to achieve this. This is very exciting actually. So yeah, and we'll get your perspective on some of the topics that we have. So our next speaker would be Dr. Usha Roopnarain. And Dr. Usha has been a former member of Parliament of Republic of South Africa. So she has an experience of running a country, and she's also a founder of Power to Empower actually. So Dr. Usha, thank you for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prasun Mishra. I'm really honored to be part of this panel discussion, although virtually I'm on this side of this world. And I think it's a very timely discussion. A little bit about myself. I was a member of parliament for 14 years. I served in the National Assembly in South Africa and had a privilege and the honor to serve my country as the youngest Indian women. And I also served as the Shadow Minister of Health in the province from which I come in KwaZulu-Natal. And I think historically, for many people who don't know, KwaZulu-Natal is also the land where the first indentured laborers arrived from India. So I have lots of ancestral connections to India in that regard. So apart from my work in Parliament, I also head a foundation, a lobby group, an advocacy group, lobbying for rights, human rights, not just for rights in terms of gender, male, female, but also environmental rights. And I think this is what touches on our pertinent topic today, clean air, clean emissions. And so, there's a lot I can say about the work of lobbying, because I think it's important to have discussions like this. It's important to have dialogues, because this is where you can agitate, aggravate, and bring about change. And I think, we don't just necessarily need leaders, to keep framing policies and programs, but I think we need to be more action orientated. We need to be driven towards moving them from paper to the actual implementation, to the actual enforcement. I think that's when the entire scenario changes, when goals don't just become noble objectives. They're not just out there, but they're something that's achievable, they're practical. And I think we're living in a time where COVID has taught us that we can't be isolated from each other. And I'm here in Africa, a continent that has 54 countries and with 1 billion people. So it's a multicultural, multifaceted, multi-layered background that I bring with me. And in terms of issues, I think climate change is very pertinent, like it is to every one of us, because every country has signed the Paris Agreement. But in terms of implementation, I think that's where our major problems are, because in Africa, some of the problems that overtake the agenda are usually starvation, poverty, unemployment, education. The list, it's a litany. It's such a long list. But I'm being brutally honest, and climate change is there in that list. So yeah, I can go on talking about this, but that in essence is where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Dr. Usha. That's amazing. And thank you for sharing those perspectives, actually. And then we'll come back to you to get some of the opinion on on some of those topics that you discussed. So as I started this whole discussion with the focus on how health and climate, and how our environment, a healthy environment gives rise to healthy individuals, right? Actually, that's the mantra. So, I think, and then there is some data actually, according to health.gov, more than 12 million people worldwide die every year because they live or work in unhealthy environments. And those of us who are joining from big cities, actually, they know what I'm talking about. Actually, environmental pollutants can cause health problems like respiratory disease, heart disease, and certain types of cancers. And this is all published data now. It's very well correlated actually. And laws and policies, that as we have heard and we will hear, that will reduce the different types of pollutions, can help prevent many serious health problems and deaths actually. So which is a fact actually. So I think collectively, if we can discuss how do we implement that, that'll be good. And then lastly, by reducing by basically reducing an individual's exposure to harmful pollutants in air, water, soil, food, and and materials in homes and workplace can be key to fostering a healthy lifestyle and reducing the overall disease burden. And that's also, so this is all coming from the Healthy People Initiative from health.gov. And my question to you all will be, do you agree actually?
And not only do I agree, I'll add to your list of threats, and those include the biologic threats. So invasive species of plants and animals, extension of the geographic reach of historically tropical diseases like Zika and dengue. And so those kinds of issues, and not to mention climate refugees that will be fleeing places that become too inhospitable for human habitation into more hospitable climates. So I think the biologic epiphenomenon of climate change are myriad as well.
And of course, there are also the genetic and DNA level exchange impacts of a lot of different parts of this pollutant environment. And so solving the problems in one level will add to the possibility of solving the problems at other levels. And that's what makes this conversation so important.
Yeah, so what John just pointed on climate refugees, in this part of the world and where I live, we have been witnessing that a lot. The flood in West Bengal, Orissa, Myanmar, people just, take refuge in India or go elsewhere, and they just can't live in those places. The sea level rises, there are hurricanes, and all is, caused by this, global warming. That has been a big problem. So how do you really take care of the rising human generated emission problem, other greenhouse gases effect on the environment, impact on the biodiversity, all that is endangering the human health, is really a point of big worry in countries which are not laid out well with the infrastructure. Like there are so many natural calamities which actually are really not planned by government. There's no disaster recovery mechanism. The level of planning that governments could do in these countries are not adequate, and maybe it will take 1 or 2 more decades to get to that level, like developed countries. So this has really posed a big threat to the lives of millions of people in this part of the subcontinent.
I think one of the prime examples of global interdependency that is so fresh in our minds now is indeed the COVID pandemic, and how getting vaccination rates high in countries that have unfettered access to vaccines does not prevent new variants from emerging elsewhere and escaping the immunity provided by those vaccines. So we have a very poignant, very germane, and very contemporary problem that we're witnessing at scale about how interdependent we are. And much as the body politic globally is becoming polarized around the benefits versus the risks of globalized markets, globalized economies, globalized treaties and alliances, we are witnessing the risks of not emphasizing our interdependencies in ways that address the issue. And case in point with climate change, let's just imagine 20 years from now, we have the ability to sequester and store all the carbon dioxide that we want. Let's just imagine that there's another Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines, which caused a measurable decline in global temperatures, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere, from the reflection of sunlight from the smoke and soot and ash that was released into the upper atmospheres. And so if we have within our power the ability to sequester carbon or the ability to release carbon to dial the set point up and down, are we going to be able to raise the temperature in the northern and southern latitudes and lower it in the tropics? No, we have one global atmospheric system. We have one global oceanic system. And to the extent that there isn't going to be a consensus around where to put that set point, and that we can't localize the set point in different countries with existing technologies. There may be future technologies to do that with space deployment, but in the interim, it raises the question of how do we collaborate globally when we may not even agree on what the right set point is for the globe, and there will only be one set point pending any sort of space-based localization of solar radiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, actually. Yeah, I think it's a global, it's problem, right? And I think I'm really happy that countries met and they have realized this, and they are now making commitments to achieve carbon neutrality, actually, and i.e. net zero, within few decades, right? Actually, but this is a big task, actually, and this is a very ambitious, audacious goal, and we need to start acting right now as a community. But so my question to you all will be, and you alluded some little bit, I think, in your previous discussions, actually, but where are the global challenges, lie actually in your worlds, so where are the global challenges and in your parts of the world, actually?
So let me take on. It's not in the same order, right? This one.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, I think anybody who is interested actually can contribute.
Yeah, so maybe it will be continuation of what I was already saying about India and Southeast Asia. And I can add Middle East to this now. So the warming of the Earth's atmosphere, mostly caused by human-generated emissions, how it is impacting almost, say Southeast Asia is 1/4 of the world's population. And if you really see, it is home to so many vulnerable diseases. And a lot of things are coming, because of the devastating impact of the climate change. India is the third largest carbon emitter after China and US. In South India, there are either droughts or heavy rainfall. So, and it's predicted every year. This results in lower crop yields, and that raises questions on the food security. The sea level rises, and you must have heard about flooding in Chennai, flooding in Odisha, and there are several riverine flooding, cyclones. Very often, like we would hear once in 5 years or a decade. Now this is every year there, and new names of those hurricanes coming, and all of this is actually contaminating the drinking water. So this is leading to a lot of diseases and also threatening the energy sources. So this has been a major problem in the Middle East. If you really see, if the rise in the global temperatures continue to be like this, 1/3 of the value of the big oil and gas companies, their valuation will go off. Basically, it'll disappear if you really don't contain the rise in the temperature within 1.5 degrees Celsius. So this has been a very big challenge, and in the time to come, I think this will pose much more economic challenge and for survival of these countries and many enterprises for that matter.
Mark, do you have a perspective from global Minnesota angle?
Well, the motivation of people, so in their jobs, in their schools, in their shopping, in their life, seems to be in a very positive direction. And so they're open to suggestions. So there are problems. There's greenwashing, there are false claims, there are, conspiracy theory, there are things. But in general, people want to live happy, healthy lives. They want their family and friends to live happy, healthy lives. And we see when there are international disasters, sometimes like in Beirut, it was an explosion in the port, destroying about 3/4 of the food, or hurricanes or earthquakes. We have a natural capacity of wanting to respond and help. For Minnesota, we often talk with each other about our state's kind of preference of organized kindness, being organized in how we respond to things and all of that. But as a general matter, the solutions are coming. The people and the, say, supply chain and others are moving in that direction. And one of the very important points that John made earlier was that we can't know what will be those solutions. So we have to be committed to moving in their direction, some ways not knowing exactly what they will, but not closing doors or ruining more land. I once visited General Eisenhower, famous general from the United States, and in his later life, he got a farm, a scrub kind of farm up in Pennsylvania. And the reporter asked him once, like, why'd you buy this farm? And he kind of kicked the ground a little bit. He said, well, I've destroyed so much earth in my career. I thought I should take some piece and put it back into good shape. And that's what he had done. And I thought, well, we have words and images of leaving the campsite cleaner than you found it, or the water leaving your possession in better condition. We have ways of speaking to the aspiration. We have geniuses, and we now let women use their genius. That not everywhere yet, but you know what I mean. We are moving in the direction of the world stopping the dampening down or destroying of expertise, genius, and creativity. We're lifting that up wherever we can. Our consumers and people are noticing or desirable, and we have the opportunity in our overall system to tackle it at a meta level. And so I'm optimistic in the way that's been described here. We're all cautiously optimistic, but we wouldn't be on this panel or caring about this or like Anil up in the middle of the night. We didn't think that we had a responsibility to do everything that we can to leave it as best as we can for those who come behind us.
Another golden word. Yeah, thank you.
That was incredibly well said. Yeah, I'd love to sort of double click on that and frame it through an additional lens, and that is that I think we share the optimism, but only if we get a global sense of urgency to deal with these. And the reason for the urgency is not just because of the first order effects of climate change, like rising sea level, hurricanes, flooding, droughts, but the second order effects. Once these first order effects, and we're already seeing this with rising food insecurity, climate refugees that Anil already spoke about is already happening. These second order effects, the contaminated water, the extension of the range of tropical diseases into populations that are genetically unaccustomed to fending off those diseases. Once those set in, very few countries will have the resources And those that do have resources are going to be the destination for climate refugees, which will overburden the social services of those countries. Unless we deal with the first order root causes, we're gonna be paddling upstream against all these second order effects. And food insecurity was a problem before climate change. It's only amplified by climate change. But that leading to all these other, just like all the sources of greenhouse gases amplify each other, these second order effects amplify each other and take us off task from addressing the root cause. So while we're optimistic, we need to emphasize the urgency of getting to the solutions before these second order effects consume the very resources necessary to implement the fixes for the root cause at scale.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the only good news is the Glasgow Climate Pact recently announced very bold collective commitment on curbing the methane gas emission, halting the reverse forest loss, stopping the internal combustion engine, and accelerating the phase out of the coal, and ending the international financing for the fossil fuel. All of these, I think, are very, very bold statement, and think they are the sensing the emergency, and I think we need to take more steps like this to really curb this. So I think the sense of emergency is the order of the day today.
Yeah, I think, and then I'm loving this. Actually, this is just amazing. So the next question, obvious question is, what role should the industry players be playing to honor their commitment to net zero? Right now, we have highlighted the problems, and I think one thing that I would like to brought is that John is here. John's former employer, Kaiser Permanente, has one of the medical centers became carbon neutral in 2020. They got a certification, and healthcare industry it overall is one among the top carbon emitters, actually. So I think so the question is, how should different various industry players honor their commitment to net zero, actually, for the better future, actually?
I believe the answer to that is floating in many different places and many different opportunities. And so picking up some of those and highlighting them, part of the purpose of the conference and other conference. But for example, 3M has used the COPs in the past to announce a policy that products moving forward had to meet that kind of standard in their development. So retrofitting a building is hard work, but getting companies to say going forward, this is where we're going to be, that's a kind of crucial thing. I have the belief that I don't know all the reasons, but at least in many parts of the United States right now, there's kind of an openness that isn't always the case. And let me say a little bit more about that. We have a huge number of refugees coming from Afghanistan right this minute. But we've had, Minnesota is a small state, but there's 75,000 people here from Somalia and about that many from Ethiopia. So, I mean, we have diasporas moving around, and we have a labor shortage. And so the political climate, which is the underneath policy, happens to be better now than in times of, let's say, high unemployment. And so we have an expression out here in the countryside of making hay while the sun is shining. I would argue that we need to be making hay to areas. COVID has alerted many of us of the deadly nature of COVID apartheid in inequality. Let's take advantage of that awareness. What can we do? Climate, yes, it's dramatic events, focused attention in Glasgow, different things. I believe that we have a kind of confluence. If we can get a handle on that other big C, that conflict, the military, the civil wars, I mean, the armed conflicts, which are so fundamental to famine and many of the other things. But if we can get a handle on COVID and climate and conflict and see that we're working together, we may see this period of great grief and great loss and great destruction give birth to a new possibility. We will grieve those we've lost, absolutely. But we also may be a bit able to take pride in the change that we were part of bringing about in making it both a more equitable world, but in doing so more sustainable and resilient and more just at the same time.
I think there's really some interesting things to look at historically. So if you look at sort of, you know, some of the legendary system thinkers of the past, Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Edison, Einstein, Albert Einstein, and now Elon Musk. And some of the things that Elon is doing right now are absolutely fascinating. Open sourcing the patents to electric vehicles, and now his reusable rockets that are dramatically increasing the payload and dramatically reducing the cost per kilogram of payload in rockets. So I think that there's an analog of that in everything we do. We must eliminate all of the single-use packaging, all of the single-use products. We are a throwaway civilization. Technology has given us the delusion that we can just create all of this packaging and single-use products as if there's no downside risk. The cost of those disposables is not reflected in the price of those products when we buy them. So we're essentially creating mountains of debt for our children and our grandchildren based upon the fact that we don't have fully burdened costs to our products when they're single use and when there's excessive packaging. So what each of us can do in addition to moving towards a plant-based diet is to teach our colleagues, our friends, our families, our children how to avoid these devastating trends in throwaway culture that we have with all of the costs associated with that. So we need at the same time to Prasun's question about how do we do this globally across industry, there's a top-down approach where you have, you know, companies that are showing net zero examples already, but we need a bottom-up as well, where we teach each other in a very constructive, not in a judgmental fashion, but in a very constructive fashion, and educate why it is that we need to eliminate all of these single-use products that we've just taken for granted. There's probably very few of us on this call that haven't consumed a single-use product today. And we just really need to shift our lifestyle. And given that technology and health are so intimately intertwined, we really need to think about that through the entire life cycle of health, in addition to the life cycle of the planet and the life cycle of our environmental systems and weather systems on the planet. There is so much that we can do as individuals. There is so much that we can do to communicate with others and motivate and recruit others into the cause, both at the corporate top-down level as well as at the individual citizen bottom-up level. And again, urgency is the most critical aspect of how we approach these issues.
Yeah, here and now, John, actually. Yeah, I think, thank you.
Yeah.
I think, thank you for highlighting that. And then, you know, I think the last question would be that, you know,
Prasun, I had
Okay,
a
go
view
ahead, yeah.
on this. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, as the world's energy sectors move away from the fossil fuel, okay, towards energy, renewable energy sources, okay, decarbonization is the key. I think, you know, so not to honor the commitments, you know, most of the government, the prime ministers and the president who meet at the global convention centers and in those arenas of the big lobbies, they make commitment. When they come back to their country, they really don't know how to go about it. The commitments are made, but then the commitments are not broken down in terms of work breakdown structure or actionable that they can execute it and in a timely manner. So Uh, so like energy, transport, and industrial areas, these are critical sectors to drive the decarbonization. So if I say decarbonization is at the core, then to achieve the carbon neutrality, uh, natural carbon sinks, which typically are soil, forest, and oceans. So they're very important. So the so soil stopping the soil erosion, conservation of the soil and the land, and stopping the deforestation, and the ocean levels are rising, and uh, and there is land reclamation happening, you know and a lot of ocean is also getting included as part of the geographical expansion by many countries, right? So those are some of those things that we will have to stop to really remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. If you really see, there are some people who try to create the artificial sinks, but till date, no artificial sinks has been able to remove more carbon dioxide than we introduce into the atmosphere. So that is one way of looking at it. The second is a carbon offsetting by the energy efficiency programs, and adding more and more renewable resources, use of a lot of clean technologies. Prashant, we were talking about how we can drive an innovation hub in California, bringing in academia, research institutes, and a lot of startup organizations to start thinking about clean and green technology, right, and drive innovation in these areas. Uh, it's not enough to whatever extent we have been applying technology and artificial intelligence. The third path is to kind of apply carbon prices or duties uh, to on imported goods from those countries who are not taking the climate and net zero programs ambitiously. Um, and the last thing is the sustainability, right? So you know instead of generating in larger blocks, generating in microgrids, through renewable sources in smaller block, I think that will induce a lot of sustainability, and will help actually honor all the commitments that world is making at global platforms.
Thank you, Anil. No, that's amazing, actually. And Dr. Roopnarain, do you have any views on what's happening specific to South Africa?
Dr. Mishra, for that question. I think it's a critical one, especially in times like this. And while governments have a very important role to play, I think climate action also shifts opportunities onto business, onto other leaders, and for that to occur, you also need finance. And one of the means is green finance. So we cannot underestimate the considerable value creation opportunities around the products we use and the services, that are aligned with a net zero future. So businesses, service industries, they need this net zero, to almost come alive, so to speak. It can't be a elusive concept out there. Neither can it, you cannot underestimate the risks of net zero. And also, I think, I just want to add from a personal point of view, we can't talk about net zero, like a once-off item. It's not a mantra, for a month or something, but it needs to be something that's ongoing. And that's where it needs to become part of your lifestyle, because the simple changes that you make, for example, a plastics hashtag, plastics must fall. I mean, if we look at South Africa in terms of plastics, close to 2 million tons of plastics are salvaged from the ocean every year. And that impacts immediately on the marine life. And it's a simple changes. And also in terms of businesses, what can they businesses do? I mean, besides green finance, it's also investments in biodegradable packages. So it all encompasses on a change of lifestyle. So the change in lifestyle also means a change in mindset. It comes down to educating, and people need to become more green in their thinking, more green in actual behavioral changes. And take simple steps from business. I mean, businesses who commit immediately, you know, it shows their corporate responsibility towards the environment. And also when we talk about clean air, automatically we talk about healthier lifestyles, because immediately it means we have better, cleaner lungs. And this is all coupled with our health benefits. So we should look at net zero in its totality, not just as something out there just pertinent to the environment, but in terms of a holistic approach. So also there needs to be transparency in terms of stakeholders, because if there's no transparency, in the end, whatever money people invest, and there's no transparency, there's no accountability, what happens? Confidence erodes, and people don't believe in that product anymore. People don't believe in that concept anymore. So we need to revitalize, and we need to have this resurgence towards net zero.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your views. And I think we are, pressing the time. And as I said, that this is, audacious task. And then I'm glad that we are mindful of, these problems that are facing humanity. And then, and we are, determined to take action to make those changes. Actually, to I think collectively we should have a net zero goal, not just carbon, but as the Earth that we found, when we leave, we should leave the zero footprint as a human being, actually. But I think concluding thoughts, what are do you have any concluding thoughts, and what are the steps actually that should be taken by the government agencies? Any recommendations that you have, and investors, actually bankers and investors, how they should be tackling this problem? Quickly, we have, I think, a couple of minutes more, actually. So or your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take this one to very quickly tell you that some steps that I have in mind that we could be taking. We are talking to a lot of capital markets, and the capital markets are a very essential part and critical force to drive the transition to net zero. So they can mandate a lot of concerted actions on all the participants, the asset owners who reallocate the capital asset, the asset managers who channelize the funds, and the bankers who manage the greener investment and a lot of innovation fund. And they are all working alongside the leaders who make these commitments, right? So they can mandate certain things on them. And then need for a new marketplace where the clean energy and sustainable products manufacturers, the technology provider, they can come together on this decarbonizing mission. And so they can come into this marketplace and act as a force multiplier, and they can induce a lot of demand for advanced technologies to make the net zero happen. And this is where in this marketplace, the capital marketplace also should play an important role. So I'm saying when digitization is going to be the key to decarbonize, meaning a lot of information is available to be able to take action. So it's sharing those information in a collaborative way. So like, weather centers, like that, climate control centers, a climate studio, climate lab, scenario analysis by which, we can do valuation of those companies who are really adding a lot of carbon to the atmosphere. Actually, they should be valued less. Some of these climate indexes will become a very useful tool to really create the awareness and gauge and sense where we are and what additional steps will be taken, is because the time is, we are losing time. Actually, we are falling short of the target, or we are not there. So these steps, I think, will be very important in my views.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anil. Mark, on your, what governments should be, what steps should be taken by governments actually in terms of policy?
Well, I'll just talk about one that I'm thinking about today. Dubai is hosting a big World Expo, and Dubai is one of the places where they're talking about the smart city, the 15-minute city, where you can walk to the things that you need, or the transportation, 15 minutes. The same news feeds include the notion that America is moving towards having DoorDash and Instacart able to deliver your food within 15 minutes from you calling and saying, I want a rack of barbecued ribs, getting it to your house in 15 minutes. These are two fundamentally different ways of thinking about using the term the 15-minute city. And I would suggest that the urgency that John has repeated over and over is probably the word to put at examining how we're in many ways going in these different directions. Where's the way we need to go to get us to net zero?
And I'll just add to those just incredibly eloquent and articulate comments that we're all driven by narrative. We're all driven by our belief systems, and we need to shift the narrative both top down and bottom up. We need to shift from one of saving money in the bank or crypto on the web to one of saving the planet for our children. We cannot, no amount of money will protect our children and grandchildren from devastating second order effects of climate change. Investing in the planet is the best way to invest in your children and grandchildren, and we need that narrative to become the predominant narrative that drives the motivation of how we realize the sense of urgency and act on that sense of urgency to protect the planet for all of us, most notably our children and our grandchildren.
Thank you, John, and thank you. This has been an amazing panel, actually, and let those be the last words, John. I think, and Mark and Anil. These have been, a great learning experience for me, and hope this has been an amazing learning experience for all of you. And I think enjoy the days of festivities and evening receptions, actually. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person and meeting you and having in continuing this discussion. Thank you all. Take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Prasun. Bye.